People don't remember anything. Um, we spend most of our lives thinking that we remember things, but we don't really. We don't take the time that an author takes to go back. As Anais Nin said, writers taste life twice. We rarely go and take the time. We all our lives we just sort of moving forward and fast forward and yeah, we may remember this or that, but writers go back and take the time to uncover those details, to surface those details, to give texture to those memories, to give dimension to those memories. And what's happened in my family is that everybody remembers things exactly the way I remember it. I've rewritten family history in a way because they haven't done the work. So, and very few of us do. And I find that's the opposite of what that's been my experience. My own mother tells me, "I can't believe you remember that so clearly." But she doesn't, and because, well, now my memory becomes her memory. But the problem of memory to me is not the way I approached writing the memoir, and I did a very explicit author's note, is the same. I considered it the same contract as when I write a poem. Um, this idea that the emotional truth is what overrides anything else. Of course, barring real life facts like I did not go and become a chef. Those kinds of things. But the idea, there's a lot of dialogue in my book of when I'm 8 years old and whole conversations taking place. It's not that I remember every precise word. I didn't have a tape recorder strapped to my chest all my life, but rather the echo of that's things that they have said that are in my cloud of memory, right? And so they probably would have said something like that. So in a way, I'm winking to the reader, going, and I'm not even winking. I say up front, read this as you would a poem. It's the same to me, the same kind of contract. It's the emotional truth, and it's not the factual truth. Of course, that has limitations when you're writing a memoir. But nobody, except when you're very young in high school, nobody reads a poem and goes, "Did that really happen?" And that's kind of what I didn't want anybody in the memoir to do. It's like, that's not the point. Did that really happen? Was that place really there? Was this, that, did that, was that really 1976? In fact, I left out specifically naming ages, specifically naming places. I changed almost every family member's name because I needed to fictionalize my own life in order to be able to write about it. And I think that's one of the hard things about writing a memoir that I think, as I've seen in workshops and students, and that they can't get over, is that you have to think of yourself as a character in your own life. And that character at 8 years old doesn't really know all the things that you know now as an adult writing it. So stop intruding on your character's psyche. Write about that character and all the things that he or she is seeing and experiencing at that moment, and let the story, of course, tell the theme. You don't need to, and then I learned that this, I mean, there's a million ways to skin a memoir, so that's not exactly the only thing to do, but that was a big lesson for me. And I think in poetry as well, of objectifying your life, I think all art in a way is an objectification of the self, and it's this great irony that it seems, another question that people ask me often is, don't you feel exposed, or like, how could you be so raw, and how could you express? I mean, it's like, well, that's not me. That's Ricky the poet. That's the artistic persona that does this, and that's not the same person that's, driving around in Miami traffic, screaming at people.